Sourdough I'd baked was still warm when I pulled into my parents' driveway in Naperville. I'm Jenna Calloway, 32 years old, and I'd driven 4 hours from Milwaukee for Thanksgiving. My husband was home with our daughter. I told him I'd be back by 9. It was supposed to be simple. I carried the loaf to the door with both hands, the way you carry something you made from scratch at 5 in the morning because you wanted it to still smell like the oven when you arrived. My younger brother answered before I could knock. He looked at the bread, then at me, and said, "Mom said it's just close family this year." He said it the way you'd read a weather report. I stood there a second. I am close family. He shrugged and stepped aside. I walked in. My mother was at the stove. She didn't turn around. My father was at the head of the table, already set, already full, no place for me. My sister-in-law looked up from her phone and looked back down. My brother's two kids were chasing each other around the living room. There was a high chair at the corner, a bib printed with little turkeys. My mother finally turned. She looked at the bread in my hands, exhaled through her nose, and said, "You should have called ahead." I did call ahead, 3 times this week. She took the loaf from me and set it on the counter next to the trash, not on the cutting board, not near the other food, next to the trash. "We already have rolls," she said. I stood in that kitchen for 4 more seconds. I counted. Then I picked up my keys off the entryway table, walked back to my car, and sat in the driveway with the engine off. My phone showed 17 missed texts from the joint account alert system, all from the last 6 hours. I hadn't looked at them on the drive down. I looked now. Hit subscribe if your family has ever made you feel like a guest in a house you helped pay for. Drop your state in the comments. I read every single one. The alert log loaded in reverse. First line, tellers and $400. Morton's Steakhouse. My brother's name in the memo, charged to the family credit card I'd been added to 3 years ago when my mother said she needed help keeping the household organized. Next line, $1 to $100. Best Buy. A 65-inch television. Delivery address, my parents' house. My name on the account. Next, $780. Four Seasons Spa, Scottsdale reservation, 2 guests. My mother's email and the confirmation. Then $340, cord detailing for my brother's truck. Then $95. Car detailing for my brother's truck. Then $95. A subscription to some meal kit service, first box already shipped. All of it today. All of it while I was driving down. I sat in the driveway and did not go back inside. I opened the banking app and scrolled the full history. 14 transactions in the past 30 days that I hadn't made. Total, just under $6,000. My credit limit on that card was $8,500. I'd never carried a balance. I paid it in full every month. They knew that. They'd watched me do it. I put the car in reverse and backed out slowly. The gravel made a sound under my tires like something tearing. I didn't look at the house. I drove to a Hampton Inn 12 minutes from the highway. Paid cash at the desk, $180 for one night. The woman behind the counter handed me the key card without asking anything. Room 204, second floor, end of the hall. I sat on the edge of the bed with my coat still on and opened my laptop. My college roommate Ingrid picked up on the second ring. She was in Portland now, doing financial compliance work for a regional bank. When she saw my face on FaceTime, she said, "What happened?" And I didn't even answer. I just turned my laptop toward her so she could read the screen. She was quiet for 11 seconds. I counted those two. "Okay," she said. "Screen share. Now." I tapped the button. She leaned in close to her own monitor, scanning the balances, the transaction history, the account structure. She'd helped me set up the joint card originally. She knew every tier of it. "The primary checking is yours," she said. "The card is supplemental. You added them as authorized users, which means you can remove them." "I know. Do you want to?" I looked at the transaction log again. The spa, the television, The steakhouse at 7 p.m. while I was somewhere on I-94 with a loaf of bread on my passenger seat. Yes, I said. All right, I'm walking you through it. Open the authorized user management tab. It took 4 minutes. I removed my mother. I removed my brother. I flagged the 14 transactions for dispute with a single batch submission. I lowered the card limit to $500 and set a real-time alert on every charge above $10. Done, Ingrid said. There's more. I navigated to the shared savings account, the one my mother had convinced me to open 2 years ago because she said it would help her have something for emergencies. I had been depositing 4 emergencies a month into it. The balance was $9,200 a month into it. The balance was $9,200. I had never withdrawn from it. I checked the outgoing history. My mother had made 6 withdrawals in the past 8 months. Total $4,700. Memo fields blank on all of them. Ingrid made a sound that wasn't quite a word. I'm transferring the remaining balance to my personal account, I said. Do it. I did. Confirmation, $4,500. Transfer pending, available by morning. We stayed on the call for another hour. I ordered room service, a turkey club, and fries because it was Thanksgiving and that's what they had. Ingrid talked me through the next steps. Dispute timeline, what to document, what not to say in writing until I'd talked to someone. Before she hung up, she said, "You're not overreacting." I didn't say anything back. But I was glad she said it. My phone rang at 11:40 p.m., my brother's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother called. Then my father, which surprised me, because my father never calls. Then my brother again. Then a number I didn't recognize, which I declined. In the morning there were 11 texts. I read them in order, sitting up in the hotel bed with the curtains open, watching the parking lot fill with people who'd spent the night somewhere else too. My brother, cards declined. What did you do? My mother, Jenna, call me, right now. This is an emergency. My mother again. We have guests here and you are embarrassing this family. My brother, there are children here and we need groceries. Fix this. My father, the only text he'd ever sent me in my life that wasn't a forward. Your mother is very upset. Please come home and talk this through like adults. I read that one twice. The unknown number had left a voicemail. I played it. It was my aunt, my mother's older sister, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. Her voice was measured. She said she'd heard there was some kind of confusion about the accounts and that she hoped I would think about what family means before I did something I couldn't undo. I saved the voicemail to my notes app. Then I called Ingrid. They're escalating, I said. Of course they are. A pause. Did you get a chance to look at what I sent last night? She'd emailed me at 2 a.m. with a PDF, a summary she'd drafted herself. 2 pages of the transaction history, the withdrawal pattern, the total amounts, the dates, formatted the way she formats things for compliance reviews. Clean, numbered, time-stamped. Print 2 copies, she said. I think you need to make a stop before you go home. The county courthouse opened at 8:30. I was there at 8:25 with the printed PDF and my bank statements rubber-banded together. The clerk at the civil window looked tired in the way courthouse clerks always look tired on the Friday after Thanksgiving, but she listened. I explained what I needed. She slid a form across the counter. I filled it out in black ink. Account misuse. Unauthorized withdrawals. Pattern of financial exploitation. The last box asked for the relationship to the respondent. I wrote mother, brother. Then I wrote it again on the second form with a steadier hand. The clerk reviewed it and stamped both copies. She said a hearing would be scheduled within 30 days, but that a temporary protective order on the accounts could be issued same day. It was. I walked out of the courthouse at 9:47 a.m. into November gray, the sky the color of old dishwater. I sat in my car for a moment with the copies on the passenger seat where the bread had been yesterday. My phone buzzed. Ingrid, how'd it go? Me. Done. Orders issued. Ingrid. Good. Go home. Kissed your daughter. I drove north on I-94. The highway was empty. Most people were driving toward family, not away from it. I had the left lane to myself for 40 miles. I didn't tell my husband everything that night. I told him the short version. There were some account issues. I'd handled them. I'd explain more later. He looked at my face and said, "Are you okay?" I said yes, which was mostly true. He made me a plate from the Thanksgiving he'd made at home, and we sat at the kitchen table while our daughter slept, and I ate cold stuffing and watched him not ask more questions. That's what a good marriage looks like from the inside. You know when to ask and when to just put a plate down. 3 days later, a padded envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from my uncle on my father's side, my dad's older brother, who lived alone in a house in Rockford and who I had always called Uncle Garrett. He'd been at the Thanksgiving I missed. He'd watched all of it from the corner where he always sat, the armchair near the bookshelf, the same chair for 30 years. I opened the envelope at the kitchen table. Inside, a USB drive and a folded note card. The note card said, "Thought you should hear this. D." I plugged the drive into my laptop. One audio file. I hit play. His voice came first, low and steady, recorded on what sounded like a phone propped against something solid. He must have started it in the armchair before dinner was finished, because I could still hear forks in the background. Then my mother's voice, sharper than I expected, not bothering to lower it. "She'll see the statement and she'll transfer it back. She always does. She can't stand conflict." A pause. "She's 32 and she still needs us to like her." Silence, then my brother's voice from the kitchen. "The TV already shipped. Just don't answer till she calms down." My father, quieter. "She drives 4 hours and you don't even set a place." My mother, "Don't start." My father again, and this time I had to turn up the volume. "She brought sourdough. From scratch. You put it by the garbage." Silence after that. Long enough that I thought the recording had cut off. Then footsteps, a door, and Uncle Garrett's voice alone, close to the phone now, just above a whisper. "Jenna, if you're listening, they're not going to change. They haven't in 30 years. I watched them do this to your father and now to you. The difference is, you did something about it." A pause. The sourdough was good, by the way. I had 2 slices. "Don't tell your mother." The file ended. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. My daughter wandered in and asked if I wanted to play. I said yes, and we played for an hour on the living room floor, and I didn't think about any of it. That night, I backed up the audio file to 3 places: my external drive, my cloud storage, and a folder Ingrid had set up for me called simply documentation. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my brother called my cell phone from a number I'd unblocked by accident when I updated my contacts. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. He said the temporary account order was insane and that I was weaponizing the legal system against family. He said my mother had been crying every day. He said the disputed charges on the card were a misunderstanding about who was responsible for what, and that he had receipts proving the television was a household purchase, not personal. He said I needed to drop the dispute, reinstate their access, and come to Christmas dinner. And that if I didn't, he would tell everyone in the extended family exactly what I had done. I listened to the whole thing. Then I forwarded it to Ingrid and to my attorney, a family law attorney in Milwaukee named Mr. Hartley, who I'd called the same week I left the courthouse. He was the kind of lawyer who spoke slowly and billed honestly and said "noted" every time I told him something new. Mr. Hartley sent a letter. It went out on a Wednesday. I don't know exactly what it said because he summarized it for me as, "We have acknowledged receipt of your client's statements and advised them that any further contact regarding disputed financial matters should be directed to this office." He said it would likely produce 2 reactions: silence or escalation. It produced silence. For 3 weeks, nothing. No texts, no calls, no voicemails from the aunt. My father emailed once. The subject line was just my name, and the body said, "I'm sorry about the bread." I read it 6 times. I didn't respond. Then in December, the credit monitoring service I'd enrolled in sent an alert. New account inquiry. My name. My social security number. I was in the carpool line at my daughter's school when it came through. I read it twice to make sure I understood it. My brother had applied for a store credit card using my personal information. The application had been approved. Limit $3,500, no charges yet, but the account had been open for 4 days before the monitoring service flagged it. I called Ingrid from the parking lot. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "That's identity theft. That's not a civil matter anymore." I called Mr. Hartley next. He said, "Come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything." I brought everything. The transaction history, the withdrawal records, the voicemail, Uncle Garrett's audio file, the protective order, and the new account alert. Mr. Hartley spread it across his conference table and looked at it the way you look at a puzzle where all the pieces have finally shown up. He made 2 calls from the room while I sat there, one to the issuer to report the fraudulent account and initiate closure, one to a contact at the county police department. We filed a criminal complaint that afternoon. Identity theft, financial exploitation, and unauthorized account access. The detective who took the report was a woman named Officer Chen, who had the kind of steady-handedness that made you understand why people choose that job. She took down every date, every amount, every name. When I mentioned the audio file, she asked me to email it directly to her case file. Before I left, she slid a card across the table. "If anyone contacts you about this case before we do, don't respond. Just send it to me." I walked to my car. It was the second week of December, and someone had put up Christmas lights on the row of storefronts across the street, the cheap blinking kind that pulse out of sync. I sat and watched them for a minute. They were ugly and cheerful and completely indifferent to everything that had just happened inside that building. My phone buzzed. Ingrid, filed. Criminal. Goes forward now. Ingrid, good. You okay? I thought about it. Me, yeah. I thought about it. Me, yeah. I think so. 3 months later, I was back in my car. Different parking lot, different city. I'd driven past my parents' street on the way to my cousin's baby shower, the long way around, not because I had to, but because some part of me needed to see it. The house looked the same from the outside. Christmas decorations still in the window, though it was March. The car in the driveway was new, different from the one I remembered. Lower trim than usual. No dealership plate on the back. The lawn had that February into March look, dead grass that hadn't decided yet whether to come back. My brother's legal situation was still unresolved. Mr. Hartley had told me not to expect fast movement. "These things go at their own pace," he said. What I knew was that the account had been closed, the charges reversed, and a formal charge had been filed. What happened next was not mine to manage. My father and I had exchanged 4 emails. Short ones. Nothing about money, nothing about my brother, nothing about Thanksgiving. He'd sent me a photo of the backyard in January, snow on the bird feeder, and said he refilled it every morning. I wrote back, "The cardinal in the corner is the same one from when I was little." "I'm pretty sure," he said. "I think so too." That was all. It was enough for now. Uncle Garrett and I talked on the phone every 2 or 3 weeks. He asked about my daughter by name every time. He told me stories about my father as a kid, things I'd never heard, and I wrote some of them down because I didn't want to forget them. He said once, in the middle of one of those calls, completely unprompted, "You know the reason you turned out the way you did. Because you paid attention." He meant it as a compliment. I took it as one. The baby shower was good. Loud and warm and full of people who were happy to see me. I ate 3 pieces of cake and did not think about anything difficult for 4 consecutive hours, which felt like a kind of victory. On the drive home, my daughter asleep in her car seat, I thought about what I would write in the journal I'd started keeping after all of it. I'd been writing in it every few nights, nothing structured, just whatever came up. That night I wrote 1 paragraph. I used to think keeping the peace was the same as keeping the family. Now I understand they were never the same thing. Peace was something I was funding. The family I have now, my husband, my daughter, Uncle Garrett on the phone every other Thursday. That's not something anyone can charge to a card I didn't offer. I underlined the last sentence. Then I closed the notebook and put it in the drawer next to the USB drive. The drive was still there. I'd thought about throwing it away more than once, but every time I opened the drawer it just sat there, small and plain and solid, and I left it where it was. Some things you keep, not to look at, just to know they're there. I've thought a lot about what I would tell someone who's standing where I was standing, in a driveway in November with a warm loaf of bread and a phone full of alerts they hadn't opened yet. The honest answer is, I wouldn't tell them anything, because what I needed that night wasn't advice. I needed to see clearly, and seeing clearly is something no one can hand you. You either do it or you don't, and usually you do it alone, in a motel room or a parking lot or some other place that isn't home. What happened to me had been building for years. I see that now. Every time I deposited money into that shared savings account and didn't ask questions, I was making a choice. Every time I drove 4 hours and carried something I made with my own hands and told myself this time would be different, I was making a choice. I don't say that to punish myself. I say it because that's what cause and effect actually looks like from the inside. It's not dramatic, it's quiet, it accumulates. My brother didn't become someone who uses his sister's social security number in one afternoon. That took years of learning that the consequences never came. My mother didn't put the bread next to the trash by accident. She did it because she'd done smaller versions of it for decades and nothing had ever changed. The system worked exactly the way they'd built it to work, until the moment it didn't. What Ingrid did for me that night wasn't complicated. She sat with me on a FaceTime call and walked me through a process I already knew how to do. What she actually gave me was permission to do what I already knew was right. That's what intelligence in a hard moment looks like. Not genius, not strategy. Just the ability to look at facts without flinching. Uncle Garrett recorded that conversation because he'd been watching for 30 years, and he finally decided that witnessing wasn't enough. That took courage. The quiet kind that doesn't announce itself. He mailed a USB drive in a plain envelope and signed it with one initial and let me decide what to do with it. That's what real integrity looks like. Not a speech, a small act that costs something. I used to think being a good person meant absorbing things, keeping things smooth, not making the Thanksgiving difficult. I understand now that I confused goodness with compliance. They are not the same. Goodness requires you to be honest about what's happening. Compliance just requires you to stay. The journal entry I wrote that night, the one about peace being something I was funding, I meant every word of it. There's a version of family that runs on one person's willingness to keep paying, financially and emotionally, for everyone else's comfort. I was that person for a long time. When I stopped, the system exposed itself. That's not something I did to them. That's something they built. And I just stopped holding it up. My daughter doesn't know any of this yet. She's too young. But someday, when she's old enough, I want to be able to tell her, you are not responsible for managing other people's peace at the cost of your own. You can love people and still hold the line. You can leave a driveway without burning the house down. You can be the kind of person who bakes bread from scratch at 5 in the morning and still knows when to take it home. That's the thing about integrity. It's not always visible when you're practicing it. You just do the honest thing in the quiet room and you keep doing it, and eventually the life you're building starts to look like the person you actually are. I still have the USB drive, I still have the journal, I still make sourdough. Some things you keep, not to look at, just to know they're there.